Hi everyone, this is Joel with Renovations Unlimited. There is a vast array of options when it comes to miter saw stands, and what I want to talk about here is what is probably one of the most popularly used stands used today, and that is the Dewalt DWX723. Now I have the stand here, and I also have a few optional accessories that I purchased to go along with the stand, and that's the main reason for making this video, is because most of the time I see people using this stand, they're using it just as it comes, just as the stand's sold. But there are some optional accessories that Dewalt sells to complement this stand and make it more productive and more user-friendly, more sturdy, and just give you more options when you're using the stand. This is a really good stand, I would say, for the money. It's by far not the best stand out there. The best stand I've probably ever used is the Saw Helper Ultra Fence, which is not available anymore. But that's going to be at least twice the money of this setup here that I have, and you could probably still buy them maybe used, but that's what we're talking about today is the Dewalt here. Okay, now for just how easily and quickly this stand sets up. Here we go. All right, the stand is all set up and ready to go. The main reason I like the flat work surfaces here as opposed to rollers, you can also buy this accessory with a roller instead of the flat table, but I don't like rollers because what happens is if you have a piece that's bowed and you're trying to move it to line it up with your mark to make your cut, the rollers will tend to walk the piece away from the fence. And so these help to keep things more sturdy where it will stay aligned with the fence properly. And also with these optional legs, it just helps this to be really sturdy out here. So you don't need to worry about an extra roller stand or something out here to support your work, because this is rock solid. You can hold this end down if more of the weight's out over, you can still hold it down with your hand here and make the cut. And as we're all very well aware of, there's nothing like having your workpiece flat on the saw table to make your cut. Otherwise, your 90 degrees not going to be 100% true. So that's always been a challenge. I've been using one of these stands. The guy that I do most of my subcontracting for has one of these stands. He does not have the optional accessories that I've added. He just has the stand as you get it. And what happens is the stand is very worn. It's quite a few years old. And these things, which are these short ones, which are obviously out here, he has no legs like this, support legs here. So these things end up sagging down. So what we're doing is we're pulling these up, the supports here, to try to get this up to where it needs to be to hold it level up there. And there's nothing, and this whole thing's just sagging down. It really gets frustrating after a while. So you put a roller stand out here to try to get more support, and then, yeah, a lot of problems. So this is just a real good setup, gets it more sturdy. Now the reason I position the saw a little closer to one end of the stand is so that on one side you have longer support. just for cutting longer stock. Now what I want to point out is these brackets that the saw mounts to. These brackets here, one on each side, do come with the stand. Now these latches here are sort of two-stage. They have a separate piece here on the bottom that you need to push up, and that releases. Now you can press the back up and actually release, and you see how it releases there. That's what holds the saw tight onto there. Another nice thing about this setup here is that these brackets that you mount the saw to can also be used. They have little rubber feet on the bottom here, and so you can actually set the saw by itself, maybe on a table or on the floor or ground somewhere. It actually holds, gets it up a little bit higher so that it's not flat on under the main saw. So, and the other thing you can do is purchase additional sets of these brackets, and you can mount, maybe you have 2 different miter saws, or maybe you have another tool. I've seen guys put router tables on here, drill presses. This stand can be used for a lot of different things. It's very versatile. So that's another good thing that Dewalt's done here. It's just a very versatile setup you can use for a lot of different options. Now one thing I want to point out, as you can see, I have 2 supports here, and the one is much wider than the other. When you purchase this stand, it comes with this support here mounted on to this wing. Okay, so this one is on here. What I did is I purchased these. This is one of the accessories that I purchased in addition to the stand, and I put these longer ones out on the wing and put the shorter ones in here. And the reason for that is because when this wing gets way out there, and it's quite a distance from the saw, being as I have the saw closer on this end, down there it's even further out, and you have let's say you put a 2x on here and it's really bowed, what happens is sometimes on these short ones you get way out there and it might almost be falling off, especially if it's a wider board, and it doesn't give you the best support. So this just gives a much wider support out further from the saw, which is really nice. Now another nice feature that they have built in to these supports is the stop. These little brackets fold up and they act as a stop. Now the nice thing about this is that when you're making repetitive cuts with your saw, you can set these stops by loosening the knob and sliding these to wherever you want them from the saw in order to get the stop where it needs to be, and then you can bump What in the world? Okay, one thing I'm noticing here is that you might need to do some revamping here. These little things are pretty cheesy. What happened here is I was tightening this down and it literally broke. You can see the pieces here. Broke the bottom of this thing right off. Come on, Dewalt, this is a brand new stand. What's going on here? Okay, well let's demonstrate on the other end then. Now this one here is not broken yet, but as you can see, if you look down in there, it's cracked. See that? So that's no good. Talk about garbage. Look, there a piece came out already. I guess I'm gonna have to put some washers under there or something. What a joke. Okay, well, stand isn't as good as I thought it was. Now, what's neat about this is you can tighten these things down right there, and then you just bump your piece against there and you can put them wherever you want. Now, these are not the most accurate stops, so if you're doing cutting that needs to be very accurate, then this probably isn't a feasible option. But if you don't have to be real accurate, it's okay. Now one thing to remember, if you're going to use this as a stop, this top part, see where this adjusts, the height adjusts. Here you can adjust these things up and down. Now this will rock. Even with these tightened up, this thing actually moves back and forth, as you can see there. So if you're going to use this as a stop, you need to make sure, obviously, that it's rotated fully back away from the saw. That way when you push the piece against it, it's not, you know, you might not be here one time and then you push the next piece and it goes further and the next piece goes a little further. So you got to make sure it's over as your stop. And the nice thing about having the saw a little closer to one end of the table is that no matter what length you want to cut it to, you have an option. So you can bring these in, obviously as close as you can to the saw, and have them right there if you need to, right by the saw. You can also, I mean, if you have anything shorter, you'd have to make a mark on your saw table or a fence here. And then if you're finished with doing your repetitive cuts, you can let this thing right here and just fold the stop down. That way it can continue to slide. If you want to cut repetitive cuts that are longer, that you can't use these as a stop, you can go out here, flip these up, and then you can simply slide this wing. Well, probably have to loosen these up and take the pressure off there. You can slide this in to wherever you need to get your length, and then you just bump the piece against here. These are the same way. See how that's leaning back? You know, you have to make sure it's tight back so that it's going to be reasonably accurate when you go to cut your pieces. Now I think these stops will be accurate enough as long as you're careful not to really jam them when you're really bumping your piece in. If you just put it against and then cut, should be fairly accurate. The other thing that's nice about having the two supports here is it just gives you more support for more flexible stuff. All right, so here's a piece of fiber cement. Now if you wanted to use a miter saw to cut this, you could. And this is just to show that these extra supports, see, if I wouldn't have that support in the middle there, it would tend to sag a lot more. But this way, especially with keeping the saw down a little further to one end, you can extend this piece out and you're still okay. You know, if you want to cut, if you're only cutting even a couple inches off the end, you can do that. You wouldn't want to go much further than that. It's really sagging down out there. This stuff can break easy, but there we go. I mean, we're cutting about 3 inches off. So I could still move this even down a little further. So this just gives you a lot of versatility, having these extra supports on here. So if you need to cut longer, you can cut out the one side, and if you need to make shorter cuts, you can go either way. So works good for that. Now we're just going to throw a 16-foot 2x4 on here. You can kind of see how that works as well. Look at that. We only have about maybe 16 inches of overhang there and a little over 2 feet here. So that's with the wings fully extended, you got really good support. You can actually even go out, you can shove this 2x4 the whole way out, being it's stiff enough, and you can cut if you only have to trim the ends. You don't even need a roller stand out there. Now we do have more weight that wants to pull up, but you can hold it down. You can do that. And like I said, if you move the saw even down a little bit further, it would help that. Now this stand is fairly solid, but one of the things you're going to have to pay attention to and watch out for is these supports here. See, these are simply held in by hand knobs. And what happens is, if you're doing a lot of plopping heavy pieces on here, eventually these things will slowly slide down and they won't be level with the table of your saw anymore. So at least they did make them adjustable, that you can adjust them, but that is one thing you need to watch for. These things are also adjustable sideways. You can see the slots here. So depending if if you want to move them, if you're cutting wider stuff, you might want to move them out just for better support. These are probably wide enough that you don't need to move at all, which is nice with those, that they're so wide. So I guess these things being broken has kind of thrown a wrench into my gears, my plan for this review. I'm not sure what to think of that. I mean, obviously that's totally uncalled for. So what guarantee is that these aren't just going to continue to break until the whole top thing breaks completely off? And then you'd have to get some kind of other bolt to screw in there. Anyway, that's absolutely unbelievable. I just want to point out to you yet the product numbers for these parts here. These support legs, DW728, and these wide support wings, DW729. Now in conclusion, these optional accessories definitely help to make the stand better, but they are also fairly expensive. So the stand itself I got on eBay for $170, which is pretty reasonable, but I think these accessories are kind of ridiculous. These support legs are $38 a piece, so that's $76 for this pair, and the wide support wings are $30 a piece, so that's another $60. So I'm actually, with this whole setup, a little over $300 just for the whole stand setup. So I just wanted to pass this along for anybody who may not be aware of how useful these optional accessories really can be and how much they enhance this stand setup here. One other thing, I might have to contact Dewalt about these things. I'm noticing that these are cracked also. The one of those actually broke. This one has some cracks in it here, like it's going to break soon too, and I've never even used this yet. So that is a really, really bad one on Dewalt. These things are literally garbage, these things. So if you want to, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you, because I don't know how long these things are going to last, if they're just going to keep breaking, or if I let them break off and then add some washers in there, maybe it'll be okay. But I guess the best advice I can give you for these is just don't crank them down any tighter than you have to. But the thing is, they do take a lot of abuse on a saw. You're putting heavy lumber on here, and they have to be strong. I mean, come on, Dewalt, you can do better than that. You have to be able to crank it down so that it's going to hold it on there, but they're just literally breaking to pieces. So I don't know what to say on that. I really don't. But that's definitely a bad one on Dewalt. So anyway, all in all, this is a fair stand overall, if I can figure out a way to fix this. So I think this will conclude the review, and I hope this helps somebody out that may be interested in buying one of these stands. So I hope you enjoyed this review. So long.